Hi everyone. Oh my
Hi,
goodness me.
Lisa.
You guys have just jumped in with 2 feet this morning. I have my notes right here. Yes, it's on my daughter's notebook because I'm on holiday right now. But this morning has been great. Thank you so much for starting us off. There was a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. Um, I really like that question, how we can keep up with private schools versus public schools. And as the very nice introduction to me had mentioned, I've worked all over the world and included in a tier 1 school in Dallas, where I had a plethora of students from what we call dreamers, so from different countries,
Oh,
and
David asked her if she wants to.
students who were sleeping on their friends'
You don't interrupt her.
And one thing that really came up was, how do we keep these students up to date
Ask
with
her if she
tech?
wants to share her screen. Ask her.
And one of the answers that I can kind of give you today, and what I'll leave you to think about today, is it's not so much about bringing forward technology. Obviously, private schools and international schools have a bigger budget for these beautiful iPads, for example. It's more about using that technology strategically and kind of linking into what Timmy said. It's also about supporting our stakeholders, so giving the teachers the training, the time to use technology, and also giving the students support for their learning in technology. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through a lesson that I've done with different classes. And when I say a lesson, it spanned over many different classes, whereby students evaluated educational games. And in doing so, they were critically thinking about what they were using as well as studying for their exams. And so the way I will present to you today was exactly how I presented to them. So I'm just going to share with you my screen. And I've already shared my resources with Rotimi, so you will have access to this presentation as well as the presentation, which is very similar to the students, to the one that I used with the students. So I'm just wondering if you can see my slides right now, hopefully. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you very much. So yeah, today is all about the EdTech Hunger Games. And so this is basically going to explore how games-based learning, such as Kahoot, Quizlet, and Bluekit, can get that balance between engagement from the students as well as academic rigor, and also getting them to think about the resources that I use in class and using them in their own time, and to choose the ones that they feel are better for themselves. As I mentioned, I have a daughter. She's 6 years old. She does not have her own device yet, but sometimes, for example, it was a 7-hour flight. I'm in Abu Dhabi right now. She did get to use her daddy's iPad, and there are 3 apps that she can use. There is, of course, Netflix, where she has chosen some movies that she wants to watch. And she also has Khan Academy Kids, and it's an Adobe app called Aqua. So she has 3 apps that she can choose from. And I feel that's enough for her. And so it's kind of saying to the students, well, there's so many things out there, and it's kind of up to you to go through all of or navigate through all of those and choose. Well, I recommend 3, kind of following on from my daughter, to pick 3 that best work for you. Otherwise, they can get completely overwhelmed. So today I'm going to show my learning intentions and my success criteria that I used also with my students. I've slightly reworded it for us professionals. So essentially, we're going to look at how games-based platforms can support meaningful formative assessment. Specifically, and then also looking at how it can maintain rigor and deeper learning. The success criteria. So essentially, by the end of today, I would like you to think about practical ways in which you can use these particular free resources, as well as also yourselves being able to evaluate these particular resources. So the theme of the lesson that I used with my students, and just to give you a little bit of context, a keyword that I've heard this morning, I teach grades 9 through to grade 12, so approximately age 15, 16 through to 18, 19. However, this lesson could be easily adapted for younger students and different kinds of educational tools. The lesson is based on Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games. I'm currently teaching in Singapore, so you can change the lesson so that it suits the students that you're teaching. So I have used this lesson before, and I called it Battle Royale, which is a Japanese movie, but it's the same premise whereby people are battling with each other. So that's essentially what that is. So in both those movies, there's a protagonist who's trying to struggle and survive, essentially. And the key word, or the key kind of saying for this lesson, is may the odds ever be in your favor. But I've slightly changed it to may the odds ever be in your gradebook, essentially saying to the students that these different resources can improve your grades at the end of the day. But this lesson is a little bit deeper than that. It also is focusing on one particular skill, which I'm really big on, and that's critical thinking. I'm not going to go huge into AI this year. The past couple of years, I've really focused on AI, but what I will mention is that this lesson can be used for AI tools to determine which AI tool is better for the student. So that critical thinking is really important, because I do feel that AI has perhaps filled that what do we call it, productive struggle that students should have, which allows them to expand their critical thinking skills. So that's the key skill that this lesson focuses on, as well as getting them to determine which different resources are good for them. So in the lesson, we start with District 1. So in the movie, I think there's maybe like 12 or 13 districts. Sorry, it's been a little while since I've watched that. So I split it into different districts, if you like. And the first one is Kahoot. So if you're not familiar with that, Kahoot is essentially interactive quizzes, and you can have live participation. And it also allows you to download data right after the quiz as well, which is super useful. There are different ways that you can apply this. One of the ones that my students like is chill art, whereby, if you can see here, you can choose a picture. So I quite like choosing the Great Wave. And each time they answer a question, it adds in a puzzle, and by the end, the whole picture is painted. So it leads to its name. It is more of a chill game. Some of the other ones in Kahoot are not chill. You'll have a lot of screaming from the students in a good way. So it's kind of up to you how you use it, but this is just one example. And so, yeah, they really like that. The second district that I asked them to look at was Blukit. It's also kind of quizzes, but there's more of a focus on, it's like a competitive game. And again, there's things like they're trying to find each other's passwords, and they're trying to steal points and things like that. So it's a little bit more interactive that way. So you can have a look here. I am a biology teacher mostly. I've taught a lot of different things, as you've heard. So this is just one example, chemical signaling. So the kind of firing between the endocrine system, for example, how the hormones are transported around the body. So you can see all those nice questions there. You just kind of host the game. There we go. Quizlet is another really nice one, and I feel like over the years this resource has just gotten better and better. The students can do flashcards and practices before you run a live quiz, and again, it can be done in different formats. So one class that I'll be teaching this upcoming year is chemistry. I haven't done chemistry in a little while, so that's going to be interesting. This is just one example, so acids and alkalis. I just want to point out here that I haven't made these particular quizzes. These are ones that I found already pre-made. So there we go. That cuts out a lot of prep time for you guys as well. And there really is, again, whatever age group, whatever subject you teach, there really is anything there for you. District 4 is Wayground. It used to have another name, and it has escaped me. Quizzes. It used to be called Quizzes, so it's now called Wayground, which again, just kind of more gamified features. As you can see here, it looks somewhat similar to Quizlet. Those two are probably the most compatible. And lastly, District 5, we have apologies if I'm not saying this correctly. My students are always laughing at my the way I pronounce things, and I always just blame it on my Scottish accent, but actually it's because I'm more of a visual learner. So I would call this gym kit, kind of like, you know, going to PE. So gym kit, kind of similar as well. So again, another quiz that I did not make, that I found and I quickly read. Sometimes I do that during a lesson whereby, for example, I've finished the lesson, I have a little bit of extra time. So I'll just quickly go into one of these resources. I'll throw in some keywords like cells and function, as you can see here, and I'll pull it up automatically. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right. So what I did within the lesson with the students is I split it up into different battles. So they were considering the 5 different resources. Okay. And so I asked them, sorry, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. My lesson plan is in the resources there. So I split the class into different groups, and within their groups, they had to discuss different battles. So that initial scramble there, they had to discuss in their groups, explain why your game grabs attention fastest. And so they had to evaluate the different resources, play through the game. So in doing so, they are reviewing specific content that I have given them, and also evaluating that specifically just on this one thing. What grabs their attention the fastest? Okay. Now, if we have a look here on this slide, these are the results that I had. I just chose one lesson. If I had a little bit more time, I would have put it all together throughout all of my classes. But I chose my grade 11 biology class specifically. And they decided that the game that grabs their attention fastest is Kahoot. So as you can see there, that's number 1. Now, specifically, I kind of put together some of their keywords there. They had mentioned because it has bright visuals, there's a countdown timer. One of the kind of famous things about Kahoot, if you're not familiar with it, is the music. And they always say that the music slaps or the music's fire, whatever. They love it, and it kind of gets them going. So that music really helps them. It grabs their attention, and it's really fast paced. At this point, the last one was Quizlet. And so we took Quizlet out of the equation. Okay. So moving on to Battle 2. And we looked at survival skills, and I asked them again, explain why the 5 games that are left. So they had Kahoot, Blue Kit, Wayground, Gym Kit, and Blue Kit left. explain why your game actually helps the student remember content. Again, Kahoot won this one. Okay, they mentioned that it helps them remember it through repetition. It also gives them immediate feedback, and they have active recall throughout the lesson. Okay, so they had chosen that one as their number one. Interestingly, and I'll come back to why it's interesting, they had voted out Bluekit. Now, one of the things I had mentioned about Bluekit, and I really like Bluekit, is that there's more of a focus compared to the other resources there on the game mechanics. So, in other words, one of the games they can play, as I had mentioned earlier, is they're trying to guess the password of their peers. So they're given a bunch of passwords, their peer chooses one, and then they have to guess which one they've chosen. So that's kind of taking away from the content, another keyword that we were talking about earlier, that they should be learning. And so they had thought that actually it doesn't focus on remembering the content, it's more about the gamification for Bluekit. So again, Kahoot won that one. Moving on to battle 3, we have 4 left. So they had to explain in their groups what is the most fun without becoming distracting. Now, I'll let you read the slide there yourself to see which one won. So again, Kahoot was number 1, Wayground was voted out. But what I will mention at this point is that the students, not only are they critically evaluating these games, not only are they learning their content, it was for their upcoming grade 11 exam for this particular lesson, they're also communicating with each other. Now, one of the things that technology is thought to do is to take away from that real, authentic, meaningful communication. And one of the things that I haven't actually added to the slide here is the really nitty gritty of the conversations that I was hearing. So, I would just be kind of walking around the classroom, listening to their conversations before I asked them to share with the class. And there were some really, I don't want to use the word arguments. I want to maybe say, like, there were some really powerful and emotional conversations that were being had here, which I was really excited about. So not only are they communicating with each other, they're learning how to share their opinions in a way that is polite, I suppose, and kind of getting them ready for professional, for the future. So that's just another really nice thing about this lesson. There's a lot of different skills that are being involved here. For battle 4, and we had the alliance test. So again, I'm just taking the words straight from the movie, and explain why your game works best with teams. So the students, they voted out Kahoot, okay, because they felt, as I had mentioned earlier, that it was more focused on speed and competition rather than that collaboration there. So even though the way that lesson is based, they're talking to each other about which games are the best in that particular battle, they're also thinking about actually using these particular IT resources. So they felt that, and one of the things I remember hearing, which I don't think I've put on the slide here, is they like Kahoot because they can use it both with me in class or they can use it at home, but they didn't feel that it helps them to work together. So it's more of a solo one, which, I mean, these battles are not necessarily saying that this one is better or this one is worse. It's, again, based on context. What do you want that particular resource for that morning or afternoon whilst you're teaching? Do you want them to be working solo? And do you want that formative assessment for each and every different student? This particular battle is looking at what helps them come together, to work together, and to study together, study the content together. Okay, so they felt that Kahoot was not great for deep collaboration, in other words. So, battle 5 is what, again, from the movie we call sponsor appeal. So they basically just had to explain why the game that they thought was the best could most realistically be used by teachers the most. I So this was a kind of a lesson that I kind of came up with myself, and I often, when we're choosing to use things in class, we're thinking, okay, what's going to be like best for the students and da da da. But I thought this kind of flipped it round. It's getting them to think about, why would a teacher use it? Now, again, it gives some really nice insights for me, but it is really getting them to think about, why do we use these games in class? It's not as a, well, most of the time it's not as a filler of a lesson. It's something that should be meaningful. And so they had thought, out of all of those, that teachers can realistically use, again, Kahoot, because it's easy to set up, it works across many subjects, and it gives teachers and students instant assessment data. Okay, so these are all keywords that were coming from the students there. Okay, so it mentions there it's widely recognized and accessible for both in-person as well as online learning. Okay, and so these things that were coming from that are really helpful for us as well as teachers, to really get inside the minds of the students, to think about what does work really well for them, and also for them to kind of come out of their own thinking and think, well, what actually works best for teachers. It gives us a really good insight. The student voted out gym kit, and they felt that the reason for that was because it was more on gameplay rather than learning. So it's teachers are not going to want to use it if there's not a focus on learning, essentially. So based on what they had said there, um, I had to mention to them, just based on their feedback and what they had said, out of all the different games that we had looked at in that particular lesson, my vote went towards Kahoot. Um, I mean, one of the reasons is really that downloadable data at the end there. I've heard of some teachers that use it for summative assessment. I've never used it for summative assessment myself. Um, One of the things that Rotimi had mentioned this morning was really pulling back on IT. I feel like I've really pulled back on IT this year. And kind of again, bringing in this public versus private school system thing, a really interesting conversation that I had during a PD session in the middle of this year was that one of the teachers I was working with had mentioned that, and they're quite high up in the IB, that they had felt that private schools were also going back to more traditional methods of teaching, to again focus on this critical thinking that perhaps AI is doing for us, rather than us having that productive struggle. And so that's why I choose not to use it, is summative assessment, and mainly for formative assessment. It can be quickly used. You can get that data super quickly. You can see where all the students are at and what they need to go back and work on, whether it be a particular topic or just a particular question there. Kahoot is really easy to use. I'm kind of reading the comments there. And some of you are saying that you're hearing about Kahoot for the first time. I am genuinely so excited for you guys. Sorry, that's my daughter in the background.
My iPad just did the close
And just close the thing. That's because I've put a time limit on it. can you bring it over and I'll fix it? Sorry about that. She does have a time limit on her, well, on your dad's iPad. Which one were you doing? The Khan Academy. This one. That one. Okay. I do apologize. Working mum. Okay, there you go. That gives you another half hour. Okay. Okay, so sorry, where were we? Yeah, it's really, and one great thing about we were saying about Kahoot. I'm really excited for you guys to find out about this. Definitely jump onto the Kahoot bandwagon. I first heard it when I was working in the US. So at that point, I had been teaching for, I think, maybe coming up for 10 years. So, it took me a long time to kind of come across that. It's super easy to use. But there are kind of, there's like tutorials that you can follow through with regards to Kahoot. Yeah. So the kind of overall winning student vote and ranking, very interesting. So I then threw out a Microsoft form to them, and they just had to choose one that they felt was the best resource. And then I just had a second part, like explain why you chose the winning one. Now, even though it seemed like Kahoot was the favorite because it kind of went through all those battles and they felt that it was better for the teacher, very interestingly, there was an overall overwhelming winner, Blukit. And they had just told me that they felt it focused more on the game rather than the content learning. So that's kind of really interesting to get inside the students' minds there. They feel that for their learning and for the teacher, Kahoot is the better resource. But if I was to say to them, okay, I've got two quizzes, both on, let's say, the mitochondria. Do you want a Blukit or do you want a Kahoot? They would choose Blukit. So it mentions there, and again, I'm taking their feedback and I kind of put it all together there. They said it's more like an actual video game, which I do agree with. A lot of them, so there's different game modes that they can choose. So quite often if I do use Blukit, I'll kind of say, right, okay, like put your hands up. Do you want to use crypto, which is one of the, and another one I think is like Gold Quest. Which one do you want to do? So they can choose a game mode and you can mix it up for different lessons. Similar with Kahoot. It's unpredictable because, and this is why it's kind of matches with Hunger Games Battle Royale, there is an element of luck in there as well. And so one of the things that I had mentioned there is that it's fun and it's exciting because there is that element of luck, which means that it's can be unpredictable. So what's really nice with this one, and it's because it's not content, well, it is content, it helps them learn the content, but because it's not content strictly, and there is an element of luck there. So for example, a student can steal points or, money or whatever from another student, not real money. The students who are maybe not great at academics but are maybe like to play games tend to do really well in this. So it gives the students who don't always do well on summative assessments, it gives them a little bit of like a celebration that they are good at, a particular skill. They're good at because there is skill involved in these games. So I remember there was one student, she has ADHD, she's on the spectrum, gets extra time in her,
It's not affecting the sound.
but she was last, but she had been keeping this, like she knew where she was going to steal the money from. She went from something like 600 points to 15 billion right at the end of the game. So that's strategic. And that's because she plays games. So she was learning to be strategic. So it goes beyond the content. Bluekit. It's strategy and critical thinking and timing as well, because all of these are timed. So as you can see there, Kahoot was the second one and Quizlet was the third one. And so as a result
So I'm
of
saying,
that,
can you mute
moving
Boya?
forward next year,
Since nobody's
I
talking
will
for
be
now. Yeah, so I'll just
using
move it.
three
Please,
in my
even switch it
class.
from Boya.
I'm
No
using
worries. Just
Bluekit,
switch it from Boya. Switch
Kahoot,
it.
and Quizlet.
Okay.
Now, what I will say to you is,
Okay.
depending on your subject, your age group, you might get a completely different response and a different um, five different games, if you like. So even though I'm saying Bluekit, Kahoot, and Quizlet are the three that I'm moving on with this coming year, I'm not saying that these are the best three for your class. And again, if what I could do next year is, I'm always looking at improving these kinds of lessons, is that three was based on the data from all of my classes. So what you could do is you could dedicate three resources, different resources for different classes as well. Um, and so, really, with this lesson, you don't have to use those five different games. If you are already using an online game with your class, then put that into this lesson. I would be happy to hear in the comments section, which I'm trying to kind of read through as well at the same time. Um, Sorry, I'm just reading some of the questions there. Some of the things there about my daughter as well. That's funny. Yeah, so just you also incorporate, if you are already using a resource in class, it might give some kind of interesting conversation. So as I had mentioned, I really thought that Kahoot was going to win, and they were like, "No, Blukit. Blukit is the one that I want you to use every single lesson," is what one of the students had said. And so you might be using something that you think is the best resource, but actually getting them to critically evaluate those, it might be something else. And so one of the things I do want to mention is that all of those five resources, I do not pay for those, but there is an option to get. I mean, it's kind of similar with anything. You can choose to pay. Quite often, schools will maybe have some sort of membership. My school doesn't have membership for any of these, so I use the most basic package. With Kahoot, it's a little bit cheeky now. It looks like you have to pay for it, but if you scroll down and there's like in tiny gray writing at the bottom, like no, thank you. So it does mention there somewhere, someone had mentioned, oh, you have to pay for it. You do not have to pay for any of those five if you do not want to. I do not pay for them. Teachers are not paid enough it should be the school. And so that's maybe a conversation that you can have with one of your stakeholders, the parents and the admins or the owners of your school. My school is a not-for-profit school, so it doesn't technically have owners, but it does have a board of members that choose where our budget goes, essentially. So they have decided that the free version is good enough, and I agree, really. It's really about using the IT strategically, and as I had mentioned, I have scaled back somewhat this year, but at the same time, we do have to prepare our students for the future. And a lot of our students also love online gaming. So this is one way to get them to connect with you and to get them to connect with the content. So to conclude, although I'm not quite finished up yet, this lesson that I did with my various classes was part of feedback over the past year. Okay. And this is essentially what I will be bringing to my lessons next year. So, just to confirm, I am moving forward with Kahoot, Bluekit, and Quizlet. However, it is really down to your subject and to your student population. But I would recommend this feedback lesson. So, in the resources that I have shared, this is the PDF one that I'm showing you right now. There is a PowerPoint editable version that you will be able to download and change the games. You can change whatever you wish. And the lesson plan is there as well. So, what I would like to finish up with is a little game of Blue-Kit, since the students had chosen. So as you can see here, I just want to run through Blue-Kit with you. Again, it's very simple to use. But since this was the winning one, so there are two different ways that you can share this with your students. You can use the QR code. I don't use this, but if it's easier for you just now, this QR code should lend you to a Blue-Kit that I have pre-made. Or there is a link there which I'm not sure if maybe I can share that with you if you can bear with me. So if I host this, in the right. So the first thing I want to share, there is a link that I've just shared. It's in the guest chat. It's a link to all my resources is the first thing. And the second thing I'm going to share with you is the Blue-Kit link there as well. But if not, you can use the QR code. So what it will do is I will choose the mode. Now, the mode that my students tend to use is cyber hack. Sorry, I call it crypto hack. But I'm going to jump on to Fishing Frenzy because that's maybe just a little bit easier. So I will share that with you. Okay. So, Fishing Frenzy is one of the games that can be used. So you cast the reel, and there's different things that you can use. My favorite animals, sharks. All my students know that. Every biologist has their niche. Mine is sharks, so that's why I like this one. So I chose that one. I just click on host there, and that takes us to the one that I have made for you. So I will just click host now. Also has a catchy tune. And if you want to jump on, we can have a very quick game. I just need a few people. So what you can do is you can either go to playbluekit.com, put in this ID, or you can use the QR code there. Awesome, we have our first player. Or you can use the QR code there. And just in another minute or so, I'll just get started. So I'll click start here. I would rather have a few more players if possible. So some people are asking for the link. I put it in the guest chat. Or you can use play.lookit.com and then you just enter this ID here. We are running out of time, so I'll give just one more minute and we can play with whoever is there. Okay. Now, one thing that I will mention is during class, what I do is I ask the students to use their real names, and I do believe that there is a setting where you can make sure that they use their real names. What that means is that when you download the data afterwards, you have their names, so it's not, nicknames are fine as long as you know the nicknames. But there you go. If you want to remain anonymous, then please do so. I'm just going to jump on to it just now. I do apologize if I've not given you enough time, but I'm very conscious that our time is nearly up. So I press start, and what you should get are a number of questions just based on the PowerPoint. once you get some questions correct, you can then start fishing. And the bigger the fish you get, the more pounds it is. If you're not getting answers right, then you're not going to get points. So lovely. So Emmy D is in the lead. Now you can see here I set a timer of 7. You can make it as long or as short as you like. But what will happen is they will go back and they will revisit those same questions. So by the end of the time, you really kind of want them to be getting 4 points on all their questions here. I think, yeah, there we go. So if you can hear the music, it gets faster. So it gives them a little bit of, yeah. So what I'm going to do in just a minute or so is I will press end now. You can choose to cut it short, in other words. You can choose to lower, to make it full screen, so on and so forth. You can add time. So again, if you're working with the students, you can give them a little bit more time. Right. So I will just mute that just now. Apologies, I think that's creating a little bit of feedback. And I'll end now. Are you sure you want to end? Yes. So as you can see here, we have in first place MED, in second place Favor, and in third place Glorious. Well done. MED is our unanimous winner though. If we click on view report, this is a little bit of what you can see here. So we managed to get 41 students in total. So my biggest class I ever taught was 42 students. So in other words, again, this is the free version. You can get a full class size in there. If you've got a bigger class than 41, I do apologize and good luck. But generally, I think class sizes should be a little bit smaller. But as I said, yeah, 42 was my biggest class. In public school settings, that can happen, as we know. So what's quite nice here is you can go back and look at specific questions and specific students and see how they did. If we click on download here, that is what do you call it? Like you have to pay for that essentially. In Kahoot, you do not have to pay for it. But you can have a look at this here and you can take note of the data. And also it's just really good to have that conversation with your students at the end. What questions did you find difficult? And so on and so forth. When the students are playing that, I don't really have to do anything. So I walk around the class and kind of have those conversations. Usually they're like, be quiet, I'm trying to do this. But you can note down particular questions that you're seeing that students are struggling with and have that conversation afterwards as well. Yeah, so well done to everyone who took part. We got mostly right questions there. One of the questions that I had put, I think, was, if I can remind, I made this before I went off on summer break. One of the questions, question number 1 is, this is the first blue kit I have ever made. And some of you will know that that's true. So this is something that I really want to kind of tell you. So these are free. I do not pay for any of these, as you can see. And second of all, it really cuts down on your prep time. I do recommend maybe like the night before your lesson, choosing a quiz and going through it. I think if you pay for it, you can save them and edit them. But as I said, I've just used quizzes that are made. You can write in the name of your particular curriculum. So I usually put like IBDP cell function or something like that, and something will come up, or a particular topic name. So that's what's really good about that essentially. Yep, and I think the rest of the questions were pretty straightforward. Yep, I've also never made a Quizlet. I yeah, so you can use this. Maybe next year I will. But this year was the first year in a new position for me. So maybe that is something I could do next year, make it more personalized to my classes. But we're all really stuck for time. And so with that, I would like to thank you all for being amazing. And I'm reading through the comments there. And I want to thank Rotimi for putting all of this together. I hope that was really useful for you. Let me know if you have any questions, and I can answer them before we go.
A warm appreciation. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that insightful session. Yeah, obviously we have a couple of questions, and we'll just dive right in. I don't know if we have questions here. If you have questions, just raise up your hand so I know. I just give numbers quickly. Please don't ask questions on somebody's question. If you have questions now, just indicate by raising up your hands. All right. Okay, none on site. I have a couple of questions online. I'll take the first one. I hope you can all hear me online, right? The first question from Ambassador Ikechukwu. My question is on gaming of lessons, right? Will the facilitator allow the learner use gadgets like iPad or laptops, or will the facilitator print out the game in paper? Well,
That is an awesome question. Love it. So I have done both. In the school I'm currently in, I'm lucky that we have the resources whereby each student will use a device. As I had mentioned, in two other schools where I've not had like literally a zero budget, I have had students write down the questions. I have had or I've printed them out beforehand. So you can do a bit of both. And that was one of the things that I had mentioned last year and the year before in my other seminars, that you can adapt that lesson that I've shared with you in a various different ways. And so, yes, essentially you can do either. You can use a device, you can get the students to share one device, or you can print out those questions. Yeah, that's a really good question.
all right, thank you very much. Okay, the next questions. The next question, please. Which of the games will you recommend for early years? Apart from the one you shared, probably that's what the person asking. What games can you recommend for early years?
Okay, so games-based apps, websites. Um, Early years is not my forte. I am learning now that my daughter is 6 years old. So a couple of apps that she's used in school or that I have kind of come across is I think it was. I want to just double check the IXL is one. And as I had mentioned, she has Khan Academy Kids. Um, that I have not paid for. That is free. And again, I think there are kind of parts that you can use for free. So I would recommend those two. But the ones that I have shared today, like Kahoot, for example, there's what you call classic mode, where it is literally just almost like the students will go multiple choice. It can be simple questions like in terms of science for the lower grades, um, what color is the pigment that absorbs light, for example? And if you have, black, yellow, white, and green, they would just choose A, B, C, D. So Kahoot, I think, could be used for early years. If I've got some from my early years teachers are like, no, we can't, then please write that in the comments. But just based on my limited experience and what I'm currently learning, I would say that, yeah, you could definitely use those ones.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll just take the last two questions together. I think maybe I should have taken this one with the one you just answered. Which of these games, excuse me, which of the games-based platform should be used for middle-aged learners? And then the other question is, what is the age range of your learners, please?
Okay, so I currently teach grade 9 to, so the age is 15 to 16 through kind of 18, 19. However, I have taught middle school or middle ages previous, a few years back, and we used Kahoot. Kahoot came from a middle school teacher. It was a professional development that I did in Dallas. So I know that they're using that in middle years. I think Blue would be, because it's more strategical, would be a little bit more difficult for early years and middle years. But Quizlet, I think definitely could be used because it's more content based. So if you've got simpler content, it's just like a flashcard, an online flashcard, then you can definitely use that with middle years as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Um, I think we have one more question.
Sure.
Somebody here, please come forward, and you just introduce yourself and ask your question. Can I have the other mic, please? The other mic, please. It's right behind your system. Yeah, come, use this one. Just come here. No, she can't hear you.
Okay. Hi, Miss Lisa. Thank you so much for this session. It was quite insightful. So I want to ask a question because I have actually used Kahoot and one other of the games that you mentioned. But you mentioned something about using it for summative assessment. And I think the only time I've always used it, like to use it sometimes at the beginning of the lesson to check their knowledge around the topic, or in the middle of the lesson to also still make sure that they are still with me. But do you use it in your school for exams? And can you share some insight on probably the ways that you use it in your own school? Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for that. So I think Kahoot use is really subjective, and so I love that you're using it at the start and in the middle, as a formative to check that learning. That's similar to how I use it. I've never personally used it for summative. So most of the time, I'll be honest, I use it at the end of the lesson to assess learning. But if I'm super organized, kind of like yourself, I'll use quiz at the start of the lesson. And if a new class in front of me, they're like, wait, what? We haven't learned this before. Like, how are we going to be successful? But what it does is it shows you right at the start of the lesson, okay, you need to know this, or most often than not, they do not know. Now, if there's a question that every single student gets right, I do a quick learning check and then I move on. Because as we know, we've got so much content. Well, I'm a high school teacher, so it's maybe slightly different, but I've got so much content to get through. So if they know that, I'm moving on. And then what I do is then at the end of the lesson, I use exactly the same test. And what that shows the students in real time is what they've learned during that moment. So they've come in, they've gotten 1 out of 10 questions right. We've skipped that one question they've gotten right because there's no point in going over that again. We've covered the content of what they needed to learn. And then at the end of the lesson, hopefully, quite often in success criteria, I will say that students should get at least 80% right or something like that. And it really depends on the class that's in front of you. But I think 80% is a good And if they don't, it's okay. They can do that again in their own time or something. But if they're going from 1 out of 10 to 8 out of 10, look at how much you've learned this lesson. And then those two questions that you're still struggling with, we'll revisit that in the next lesson when I come to see you. So yeah. Um, there are different ways to use it, and I would suggest using it for formative assessment.
All right, please let's put hands together. So thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to having you hopefully next year.